Plaintiff Curtis Dennis met the defendant at a training weekend for parents of special needs children. And years later, they formed a nonprofit organization to help parents in similar situations. Curtis claims he created the website for the group, which he is no longer a part of, and he was never paid. So he's suing. Defendant Steve Williams says when he started the organization with Curtis, everyone volunteered their time to get it off the ground, and no one was paid. Steve claims once Curtis decided to leave the group, he shut down the software so no one could access anything, and therefore Steve refuses to pay.
All right, start with you.
Steve and I met, I believe it was in 2007. We were attending a training weekend put on by Washington State for the parents of special needs children. I have a son on the autism spectrum, and Steve has a adopted daughter who suffers from fetal alcohol syndrome. We met at the weekend, made a connection. We just found that even though the issues I was dealing with came from a mental health perspective and his were from a medical perspective for his daughter, we had a lot of common ground. And in 2011, Steve, myself, as well as several other dads, formed Dads Move, a nonprofit organization to provide the support, training, advocacy, and resources for the parents of special needs kids.
Good. How have things worked since then? What all have you done?
Since 2011, we have been given, I believe it's 3 grants from the state of Washington to provide training weekends for parents, facilitate support groups, and launch a resource-rich website. And that is the main focus of the intellectual property, is the Dads Move website.
But the activities, though, how have they gone?
The activities have gone well. We've done several training weekends for dads. We've attended 3 national conferences on children's mental health. So the organization's done very well.
Okay, good. You all got a grant the first year?
Not the first year. I believe we got our first grant in 2012.
Took me 5 years before I could get a grant when I started my agency. The agency I started when I came home from college, not my community center. I got to finance that 100%. Grant folks say, you got enough money, we ain't giving you a dime. You pay for it. But when I came home from college, did the same thing. Me and my buddies, we started an agency called Young Adults Asserting Themselves in '86, and we went back into the community to help young adults get jobs and place them in training programs.
Plaintiff Curtis Dennis says after he met the defendant, they started a nonprofit organization to help parents of special needs children. But he's suing because the defendant failed to pay him for creating their website.
You give me some background, sir, on the organization, and I want to hear about who donated what to the organization, because it sounds like he's saying that you all were supposed to pay him, and I want to know who else was getting paid in this volunteer dads organization.
Up to this point, outside, the last grant we received had some specific deliverables in it that did require us to pay somebody to do the deliverables. Through that, Curtis received $4,000.
So you're on the board?
I am on the board.
You're on the board?
He was a director. He was a co-director.
Of the board?
No, of the organization.
Of the organization. All right.
I am the president of the board of directors.
How many people are on the board? Just curious.
On the board right at the present time, there are 4.
You know what I want to do? You know, this is a big part of what this show is, to educate people. I want to let people know how you start an organization, a nonprofit, and you go and get grant funding. So I think what we're saying, and we can all agree that you and how many of you guys came together to found it?
I'd say there was, what, 5 or 6 of us?
5 guys came together, and you had an idea. And then you all said, okay, this is what needs to be done. And then the board members, volunteers, either you all did it voluntarily, or you went and got some other people to help you do it, right?
Yep.
Then you filled out the paperwork with the state.
Yep.
And if you want a 501c3 tax-deductible designation where people can donate to you and write it off on their taxes, that's something you must send to the IRS. It is extremely difficult. They have you fill out 50 pages. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely.
I was in law school and I couldn't half understand most of that stuff. Very difficult.
Very difficult.
So you apply for the 501c3 nonprofit. You get that. It takes about a year, 6 months?
Year.
About a year before they
Just
tell you,
over a
okay.
year, yeah.
And then at that point, you qualify for tax-deductible donations.
Right.
Up to that point, you can accept donations, but you have to let the people know they can't deduct it.
Right.
You're not getting any donations.
Right, nobody's gonna give it. No, you got people will give it to you, but when you start out, most of the people have to come out of their own pockets, right?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm saying this because a lot of people want to help their community.
Yes.
A lot of people want to start an agency. A lot of you guys want to start nonprofits. This is what you have to do. The board of directors, then you set the policy and the direction of the organization, and then you hire people if you get money, and otherwise the board keeps volunteering. So in this case, he was one of those folks that got paid for a particular service.
Well, it was
And
always,
that is the designing of the website.
yes, we always joked that we were an all-volunteer, or not joke, but we were an all-volunteer organization, and the running joke was once we get a grant, we can start getting paid for some of the time and energy we've put to get the organization to this point. 2012, we got our first grant, which was a sustainability grant through the state of Washington that allowed us to do some training with the dads, technology training to make them more proficient in email, Word, Excel, those type things. In April, I decided to leave the organization and pursue other interests. At that point, I began conversations with Steve, since he was the president of the board, about the intellectual property. All the content that is currently at the website was written by me. There were a few edits suggested by other people, but 98% of it came from me and my computer. So Steve and I began conversations about what this would be worth. And I sent him an email and said, I think, for 4 years worth of work, $3,000 is actually a very good bargain, but I offered to drop it down to $2,400 because we'd all been working together.
For the design of the website.
For the design of the website and the training curriculums, the PowerPoints, the training workshops that we do.
Okay.
So we agreed on $2,400. Steve and I had an email string going. So on April 29th, he said that they agreed to pay me $2,400 for all of this work, and then I would sign over the rights of exclusivity to them so that they could use it in whatever fashion they so desired. Yep. That was on April 29th. May 3rd, I sent him an email asking him what was the status on getting that release form created so that we could get this done.
Haven't gotten your money, obviously.
Haven't gotten my money yet. No.
Plaintiff Curtis Dennis says after he met the defendant, they started a nonprofit organization to help parents of special needs children. But he's suing because the defendant failed to pay him for creating their website.
You want $3,000 as opposed to $2,400. How?
Just because of the time and energy to get to this point, and the fact that all of my intellectual property is still at their website.
Okay, but you had an agreement of $2,400.
Yes, sir, we did.
And what defense are they using? What are they telling you about your money?
Well, Steve came back.
What's his last response?
His last response was Wednesday, May 27th, and he says, after reviewing their options, they have decided that they will pay me $200, final offer, as a goodwill gesture to me.
Sir.
Okay, well, I think there are some minor differences in the process. In the process of him moving forward and leaving the organization, there were a couple of times when he shut the emails down for all personnel in the organization.
Why?
And did all of that, and we made it.
Why?
I'm not really sure why. The
But
original
all this time, you haven't asked him why you shut it down.
In the process of it, he started to tell us that he wanted to be paid for intellectual properties and there was a dispute between us about whether there was any true intellectual properties and who did it, because we were an all-volunteer organization where everybody donated their time and effort to put into building the organization so that everything that was there was part of the organization. We did make an agreement to pay $2,400, and we made over about a 3-week period, there was a back and forth, let's set up this date and we'll meet to give you the check and you'll sign the paperwork. He couldn't make one of them, then we tried to set up another one and we couldn't make it. And then finally there came a point where he demanded that we would either pay him by this date or he would be taking us to
All
court.
right, with all that
And
involved,
with all of that involved in saying that, he then shut our emails down again.
But back up. How did you go from 2,400 to 200? I still haven't gotten over that.
Now,
How did you go from owing the man 2,400 to say, we'll throw you 200? Now keep it moving.
we just wanted to offer him something.
You already offered him something. You had an agreement. You had an agreement. Let me look at this website. Help me out over here, man. Let's see what the man did. All right, let's see. Okay. Now let's go into these sections. I want to see how complicated it is. Go down a little more. Now, next training. That's what I want to see what that is. They provide some extra training. IMP training registration form. Save your spot today. Here are the specifics. Training Institute. Let's go there. Dad's Move Training Institute. Sir, this is 2,400 all day. Anywhere in the world. Sir, I don't know the intellectual property, sir. I don't even necessarily think it's the intellectual property that you are owed an amount for. I think it's the service you provided, the actual work that you did in designing this website. Your work is what you are suing for. I'm going to just correct that a little. Okay. And so you're suing for the work you performed. You guys told him you would give him 2,400, and then just take this 200, man, and get going. Get on out of here. Seriously, sir, there's no reason not to give him his 2,400. This is $2,400 worth of work. There's no reasonable defense to not paying this man at least $2,400. $200, you need to be ashamed of yourself. You all are gangsters. Judgment for the plaintiff. Get your 2,400. Have a good day.
Well, I'm just glad we got it rectified and were able to get paid a reasonable amount for the work that was done. That was my objective the entire time in pursuing this action. So I'm hoping that there's still some sort of a relationship we can have after this. It's never been anything personal. It was always business. So
yeah, I recognize that having thrown the $200 bone at the end was a bad choice. I still dispute the issue about whether we were volunteers or employees, and that the work he did was volunteer and should never have been paid for it because no one else has been paid for any of the work that they've done.